Counting is difficult. Could be difficult, especially the more the more you're trying to count. But lying, not so much. You just make something up, and you hope it catches if that is the way you choose to do things. That is certainly the way the Palestinians choose to do things. We've covered the fact that they've been lying about death tolls multiple times. We've done whole episodes talking about it. We've talked about it in episodes that were about other things. We never actually said, these are the numbers. We said these are the numbers that Hamas is giving us, and there is no reason to believe them. But for the narrative of Western media, for the narrative for the policy changes of Western governments, and of course for the United Nations, which is essentially an anti-Israel organization that does little else other than um, making the case for the elimination of the Jewish state. The numbers provided by Hamas were good. It's a high death toll, therefore Israel bad. Now there's a lot wrong with that, with even that assumption that if this death toll was correct, there's something wrong with what Israel is doing. But last night, all right, how do we how do we even cover this? So, Hamas revised down the death toll of women and children. So what we've been hearing is the number is whatever it is, 35,000 or whatever, of which whatever number doesn't really matter is women and children because they would just, make that up because they know in the West, women and children is something that some in the West will hear and say, well, that is what makes this evil, rather than that is what makes Hamas evil for hiding behind women and children. Anyway, they revised that number down. They didn't revise down the number of the actual death toll. So I guess they maybe discovered that some of the children were actually adults and some of the women maybe were non-binary, or I don't know what they were. But yeah, that is the recent news. Now the UN first kind of admitted that this is wrong. Then they chose to deny it and they said it's coming from Hamas. We haven't verified it. Well, thanks for that. Welcome to the Daily Objective, day 221 of the war in Israel. Yeah, today we're talking about this recent news, which should be headline news in all the places where everything that Hamas has claimed has been headline news, but of course it isn't. It is only here on the Daily Objective. James.
The numbers that Hamas have been spreading are lies. We can show repeatedly that they've simply made up numbers, pulled it out of thin air. When the hospital got bombed, not by Israel, as they first accused Israel, but of a terrorist organization accidentally hitting that hospital, they simply made up a number, 500. And that was considerably revised downward and downward until we finally got numbers that are a bit more realistic. But the point is, Hamas lies. And Hamas wants the world to think that all these women and children are dying. No, let me go further. Hamas wants their own children dead. They say, we love, every time a Palestinian says, we love death more than you guys love life. Every time a Palestinian family says, we're having children so they can be martyrs in this cause. When you watch the atrocities of October 7th, it's clear they were trying to provoke an angry response. But consider, they also put their rocket launchers and their leadership facilities under schools and hospitals. That can only mean they want their own children dead. They want the headline for their own children dead. That is what they want. There was a song that Sting, the front man for the rock group, The Police, he sang a song called "If Russian Mothers Love Their Children Too," title something like that. It was naive at the time because, of course, Russian mothers had little say in Soviet leadership during the Cold War. But if mothers did decide things, of course, they would probably opt for peace. In the case of the Palestinians, I don't think that's even true. In the case of the Palestinians, I think the mothers, whatever kind of love that mothers and fathers have for their children, does not exclude their being murdered in this cause, or not murdered by them in this cause. Because that's, of course, the moral question here. It's not a question of numbers. It was never a question of numbers. That is rank moral intrinsicism. A defender, when attacked, has the right to eliminate the threat. to take out the potential for any more October 7th. Completely. The number is irrelevant. We do not have the power, the right to take children away from Palestinian parents. And so it's the Palestinian parents who are killing their own children intentionally. Intentionally. That is their strategy. Their strategy is to kill their own children. So they want the number big. They want to exaggerate. They want the number probably to be perceived as even bigger than it really is. But if necessary, they are perfectly happy to see their own babies die. That is the way most Palestinians, quote, love their children. There is no anti-Hamas movement within Gaza. These parents, as we've pointed out many times, are morally responsible. The civilian population is largely morally responsible. The innocent children, unfortunately, are the victims of their parents. It's not a question of numbers. It's if the number, assume that the actual number was twice that Hamas had reported. If that meant the elimination of Hamas, that would be what Israel must do. Israel has a responsibility to remove the threat, even if that means killing women and children. The responsibility for all those deaths is that of Hamas. And in this case, it is particularly obvious that they are aiming for, wanting. You don't put military stuff under schools and hospitals unless you want dead children and dead babies. They want it.
Yeah, and so WUB says they pushed the genocide narrative. Yeah, these numbers maybe were a part of their desire to push the genocide narrative, but remember they started this narrative right away. So Francesca Albanese, the UN special rapporteur on the occupied territories, it took her a week to say that Israel is committing genocide a week after October 7th. Long before Israel launched a ground operation, when Israel was just bombing from the air, and of course, unfortunately, very carefully bombing and letting terrorists get away so that so-called innocent civilians would get away. She was already pushing that narrative. We talked about how the genocide narrative was something they started to push in October, not just by her. We talk a lot about Owen Jones here. I've mentioned how in October he said, some people say this might start sounding like genocide. They eased it in, and the rise in numbers, which we covered on this channel, and how the rise in women and children, the number of women and children dead was in a period of a few weeks in the exact same percentage every single day. This was Hamas giving their representatives in the West what they needed in order to make it easier for them to push that narrative.
Hamas wants the biggest number possible, and they are only correcting the number. Of course, the UN hasn't verified any of this. They rush in to tell us that. They're just repeating, they're aping whatever numbers Hamas is giving them, which is the disgusting pattern with Western media too, as well. Western media will report Hamas's numbers. Now, why is Hamas correcting these numbers? Well, we've had on this very channel repeated discussions of how statistically it is simply impossible for their numbers to be correct. I have myself spoken with statisticians who tell me it is simply impossible or highly improbable. The numbers simply just don't make sense that we were given from Hamas. The numbers were bullshit. Would they have preferred the bullshit numbers? Would they preferred not to have to revise them down? But it was only because they were forced by the actual experts out there who were saying it's clearly this is bullshit that they were forced to even revise it. I'm sure they regret having to even revise the numbers down. In fact, there's got to be a part of them inside that's sort of disappointed they didn't actually have that number of babies that they could parade in front of the media. As I say, their strategy is to kill their own babies here.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Our Fermo puts it perfectly. It's war. People die in war. Blame those who started the war. Yeah.
Amen.
And thank you, Gail, for the super chat. Carla says it's sad that the pro-Pallies are forcing us to have to come down to these discussion about the number of deaths. Well, yes, it is sad, and the reason they're doing it is the reason we're commenting on it is because they choose to lie, and they choose to make those numbers what they use in their lives. So we've talked about the different levels of let's say ability to make full arguments as opposed to just using slogans. And we covered that interview with that girl who was occupying some university in the UK, who was unable to have complete a full sentence without using the word genocide. Now, when they do have a bit more than the word genocide, it's the numbers. That's where they go to. So it is unfortunately important. And when I really want to understand what these people are thinking, I don't go to those, listen to those kids, and even if the media has them on, I go to the source I know I can trust to always tell it like it isn't, and that is the Guardian. So, James, there was this Guardian article that I sent you, and this was before the UN denied its
Okay, now
own.
you'd think that the Guardian would be red-faced at this moment. The numbers have been revised down. It's basically half the number of children Hamas is now saying were killed, a little less than half, but still, we're talking about like a nearly 50% reduction in the number of children they say are dead. Oh, and by the way, when you add up the new numbers, they don't add up to 35,000, but they're sticking with the total dead number of 35,000. I guess there's 10,000 that are unidentified. But look, we don't even know Hamas's methodology in identifying, in counting. We're not given their data sheets or how the foundation for how they get these numbers. They're just, as far as I'm concerned, these new numbers are just as arbitrary and ridiculous and untrustworthy as the old numbers. They were compelled, as I say, by the sheer dint of the evidence and logic to have to revise them. But you would think that the Guardian, getting back to my first point, would say, "Gosh, we're really sorry that we've been heating up students in the West, heating up people in the West." With these exaggerated numbers, and boy, we're sorry. We're ashamed that we've been exaggerating. No such line comes from the Guardian. In fact, every major Western media outlet should be hanging their head in shame right now, putting it on the front page with a big headline: "We're sorry." But I wouldn't hold my breath.
Well, so thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat, and let's hear what the Guardian itself says. So the headline of this article now, I don't remember what it was when I sent it to you. I didn't make a note of it because I didn't expect it to change, but it's now UN denies Gaza death toll of women and children has been revised down. Spokesperson says confusion results from Gaza Health Ministry's new way of classifying those not yet fully identified. And then the story starts. The UN has denied that the estimated death toll of women and children in the war in Gaza has been revised downward, pointing towards a confusion between the total numbers of dead bodies recovered and the number of those who have so far been fully identified. After the Gaza Health Ministry's revised total of those killed first appeared on the website of the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, they were quickly seized on as proof by pro-Israel media and commentators that the UN had previously been exaggerating the toll. No, as pro-Israel commentators, we can tell you, we have been saying this all along, and we knew this all along, and you knew this all along, because you had enough instances in the past of Hamas reporting things like the Al Ali hospital 10 days after the October 7th attack, when a misfired Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket fell on the the parking lot, and some people died. We don't know how many. It may have been in the dozens, but the immediate report from Hamas was 500 people died in an Israeli airstrike, and that was reported as news. And that is still on Jeremy Corbyn's Twitter, by the way. That from October 17th, he has not deleted the tweet saying that Israel bombed Al Ali Hospital and killed 500 people. So, you just report it because Hamas tells you, and then you repeat it, and now you're saying, well, pro-Israel commentators are seizing upon it. Well, no, we knew it before, and yes, we are seizing upon the fact that you are exposed by your own people as liars.
Yes, these pro-Israel commentators have been saying this for quite some time. No surprise. These pro-Israel commentators could morally justify double the number of casualties if that was required. These pro-Israel commentators still don't trust the matter. And these pro-Israel commentators don't blame the UN for this. In the sense that they came up with the numbers, we blame the UN for believing and reporting whatever numbers Hamas is giving them. So the UN is absolutely, well, Jeremy Corbyn, The Guardian, the United Nations itself are accepting what the perpetrators of October 7th tell us, what people who put rocket launchers into hospitals and schools tell us, what people who lied about that bombing tell us, and they just believe it. And they just believe it. They are absolutely pro-Hamas, anti-Israel in their disposition, walking in the door, walking in the door. As I say, they are worse than useful idiots. Jerry Corbyn's just still lying, for example, and a lie he could easily know that is a lie. So why do these people still continue to promote lies like this? Well, it is absolutely because of their moral interests. Part of this is a Dagny Taggart problem. As I was saying, if the mothers love their children too. Well, we really, people in the West cannot project their own benevolence, cannot project their own love for their own children onto these Palestinian monsters who could perpetrate October 7th. I would ask you, could you do October 7th? Could you tolerate people in your life who could pull off October 7th? No, I couldn't. So we have to, like Dagny Taggart, come to learn not to project our own benevolence.
Some people haven't haven't read Atlas Shrugged, but,
Oh,
uh, but but
there's a
but
great.
I will say those who haven't read Atlas Shrugged, those who haven't read Atlas Shrugged should become members of ARCUK and
Yes,
sign up
I
before
am
the Atlas
referring
Shrugged
to.
book club starts in
I am referring to Ayn Rand's famous
October.
novel Atlas Shrugged, where the protagonist has to learn a very important lesson, and I am giving a bit of a spoiler. But the point is that Ayn Rand is indicating through that character. Let me just cut to the chase. That would be a mistake to project your own love of life, your own benevolence onto other people. There are people in this world who do not share your love of life. They say so. Palestinians actually say so. We love death more than you guys love life. I'm breeding children to be martyred. And then look at what they did on October 7th. This is a death cult. They're trying to provoke, they're just as savage as they can be to release their own savagery, but also to provoke as angry a response as they possibly could. This is what they do. They do not love life. It's hard for a benevolent person to wrap their head around. But the reason why you get these exaggerated numbers is that it was wishful thinking on their part.
Thank you, Hamilton Script, for the super chat. He said the Palestinians all have numbers. At some point, they will need food and financial aid other than raiding trucks, and we're going to get caught. They have practically no economy and rely on foreign aid. Yes, well, they rely on foreign aid, and of course, that foreign aid gets wherever Hamas wants it to get, and they want it to get to their terrorists, their fighters, and towards building when it's building anything that would help kill Jews, like tunnels, actual weapons from whatever they can
Hamas
make.
has controlled Gaza now for many, many, many years, and they did nothing. They lifted not a finger to make that place a peaceful place where people could actually get on and make their own lives prosperous. Israel is productive, and something, they're not starving. The fact that these people in Gaza need aid is their own fault. Is their own fault, is the direct result of the same death cult ideology that causes October 7th. They do not want to live. I'm going to say this in a way that I know is going to shock everyone. They can't even believe it. They exist to martyr themselves to kill Jews. That's what they exist for. They do not love their life as you and I do. And it is a mistake to project our love of life, our benevolence, our love for our children onto them. They do not share that. They wanted schools and hospitals bombed. They wanted the bigger number. They would be happy today if they didn't have to revise it down. That is how disturbing the mentality, the dominant mentality at least, in Gaza is.
Kira says, Razi, do an episode on students walking out during Seinfeld speech. That's a chance to quote Seinfeld. So we were thinking about doing that. We might still do it, even though it's kind of old news, but other things came up. Tomorrow we're doing something about students, but it's the students who went on a hunger strike, but then stopped it because they were hungry. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Donna, for the super chat. Should we go back to some more of this Guardian article? So
You
yeah.
need to.
Yeah, the last line was these numbers were seized
We're
on.
sorry. The Guardian should have had somewhere in there. We've been such sucker useful idiots that we've been reporting their numbers uncritically. But no, that would sort of be an admission of their biases all along, wouldn't it? So they're never going to admit why they promote the lies that foster, mind you, violent reaction in the West. They have no. That's what they like. That's what the
Yeah.
media and the intellectuals they are who are sympathetic with Hamas. Who those professors who said marvelous, fantastic, exhilarating. Those professors exactly want that. So they're never going to admit that they bought into lies and that they were exaggerating these things. That they had any role in creating any kind of irrational response on the part of Western college students. No.
Yeah. So yeah, they said these numbers were quickly seized on as proof by pro-Israel media and commentators that the UN had previously exaggerated the death toll. They showed 24,686 dead, which appeared to be a downward revision from the figure of about 35,000, which had been reported earlier in May, with 7,797 children and 4,959 women confirmed dead. About half the toll cited in previous reports. But the UN said on Monday that estimated overall death toll remained about 35,000 people. So,
if you believe that, I've got a bridge over the East River that goes to Brooklyn that you might be interested in buying too. Unbelievable. First of all, as I say, think of the moral perversion of believing their numbers at all, reporting their numbers at all. I mean, that shows the moral perversion of the United Nations. It shows the moral perversion of the Guardian and every other Western media outlet who's treating these numbers that way. Just a total moral perversion, even to accept and repeat their lies. And that's what they should say right now. Henceforward, we will not be repeating the terrorists' lies. Hey, maybe we shouldn't have trusted the guys who did October 7th from the beginning.
That would require many things of them. First of all, calling Hamas terrorists, which of course.
Yeah.
All right, should we read some more of this? So,
yes, I'm sorry.
Farhan Haq, a UN spokesperson, said the new smaller numbers reflected those bodies which had been fully identified. The bigger figures included corpses for whom identification has so far not been completed. Haq says it was expected that as the process of identification continued, the official tolls among women and children would also rise. And then there's a quote, the overall number of fatalities was tallied by the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which is our counterpart on dealing with the death tolls. That number remains unchanged, and it's more than 35,000 people since October, Haq said, noting that the UN was not in a position to verify any of those figures. What's changed? This is the rest of the quote. What's changed is the Ministry of Health in Gaza has updated the breakdown of fatalities for whom full details had been documented. So there's so much there. First of all, they said, yeah, we expect the number of women and children to rise when they're identified, but it just went down by half. So what does that say to you about what the numbers you've heard so far? And you admit very clearly that Hamas is your counterpart in this. These are the people whose numbers you're repeating as facts, and those facts are then what you use to advocate for certain policies. What are you saying about how you're going to look at the numbers going forward? And of course, that I don't think anybody in the UN asked any of the reporters there asked because they probably don't want to lose their press credentials.
Well, it's so funny. Israel's been taken to international court on this, and think about it, with numbers that were that shady, dishonest, hatched. They went to court calling this genocide, accusing Israel of war crimes. That tells you also the bias, intent, and mental distortion on the part of South Africa. Indeed, a tribunal that would give such an accusation a hearing of genocide. These people don't care about the facts. Facts have nothing to do with it. They hate Israel.
Yeah, I also see there's a troll in the chat, or a trollish person kind of giving the facts, like Israel holding Palestinian hostages. Of course, they're talking about terrorists. This person would think that a serial rapist in America, if he gets arrested, he's a hostage and somehow a
Hostage.
victim of the women he raped. No, that is not facts, even if you call it facts. But it might go into our next debunking video, because we did the video about debunking the most popular pro-Palestinian lies. But we didn't. It was only an hour long, so we couldn't get through that much. So thank you for providing more such lies. It's what's sad really is how widely accepted this is, and without kind of seemingly without question by these people who in some cases seem like they're like functioning adults, and you have to wonder how they come to the point where they express a view on something without thinking, maybe I should look into it. And of course, that's the generous way of looking at it, which is they haven't thought it through. The less generous is they know exactly what they're doing,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
want to push a narrative that would help encourage other people to support the extermination of the Jews who Hitler didn't manage to exterminate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're a Palestinian in Israeli custody, you're lucky you're not dead. You're a terrorist. You're a criminal. I mean, on the battlefield, they could have just shot you dead. In fact, it's bizarre that our trollish guy puts. Would you prefer them dead? It's obvious that your folks, the Hamas, want them dead. They want bigger numbers. They want more fatalities on their own part. The side you're advocating for, Mr. Troll, wants these Palestinians dead. They want more. They want more of their own babies dead. That is the only way to understand the grotesque exaggeration of numbers, or these other statements, or October 7th. Put it all together. They take them at their word. They love death more than we love life. They say it.
Yeah, and again, this person is now defending his pro-Hamas lies by calling it critical thinking. It's maybe critical, but it's not thinking. And yeah, look, again, we shouldn't assume that these people don't know. I do that sometimes, but we shouldn't assume that these people don't know what they're saying.
See,
We
that's
can
a bit of a
assume that.
Dagny Taggart thing, even in you, Razi.
Yeah, we can assume that they saw the videos. They saw Hamas
Yes.
live streaming themselves.
Yes.
They saw the Palestinian people out on the streets on October 7th celebrating. They know the reports of the fact that Palestinian families held hostages or still holding hostages, and they've heard no reports of opposition to it from among the Palestinians. They know the Palestinians are a death cult, and that's why they support them. So yeah, maybe we are paying too much attention to these lowlifes, but
And all this talk of ceasefire and all this criticism of Israel has gone on while hostages are being tortured and raped. Those who are still alive are being tortured and raped. Okay. It is evil to talk about ceasefire under those conditions. Truly evil. It is a dereliction of the government's responsibility to even be discussing a ceasefire while these animals still hold hostages who we have good reason to believe are being sexually assaulted and tortured if they're still alive.
Yeah, by the way, Frank, Tel Aviv is not the capital of Israel. Jerusalem is, although many
Jerusalem is the
countries don't
capital of Israel.
recognize it. And today is the Independence Day in Israel. So today's episode of the reality show will be about Israeli Independence Day, or as jihadists and their allies in the West call it, Nakba Day. It was a very different Independence Day than usual in Israel, for understandable reasons. But we will
It
be talking about.
commemorates a great victory of Israel in the what they called Nakba is in fact a great victory that Israel achieved over 70 years ago and is worthy of celebrating today. So to all of my Israeli friends, in fact, to all of my Zionist friends, really happy Israeli Independence Day.
Yeah, happy Independence Day to people in Israel, and join us for our Independence Day celebration, which is, of course, an episode of the reality show. Thank you, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Larisetto, for the super chat. Larisetto says, thank you both. People of goodwill unite. Yes, and we've been talking about that. There are people in the world, maybe their governments don't agree with them, but there are good people in many countries who are on the right side of this, and thank you for that. So we'll see you in a minute on the reality show.